Hello and welcome to part 2 of the FreeCodeCamp JavaScript Calculator Challenge. In this video, I'll be building the components from ground up and will add some very basic functionality. This is what the project looks like thus far. App component is being rendered onto the page, but only with placeholder text. So first, I'm gonna wanna create a button and screen components. To create a React component, we need to import React from React. It's also a common practice to, using destructuring, import a component from React package in order to kind of shorten the syntax. Otherwise, you'd have to write it like this. There might be some added benefits that I'm unaware of to doing it this way. I've just noticed that this is a very common practice and I incorporated it in my own development. Moving on, every React component needs to have a render method, and that render method returns what's called JSX, which kind of looks like HTML. It kind of looks a lot like HTML actually, but it's not. One of the differences, for example, is that you use class name instead of class. And last but not least, you need to export the component in order to be able to import it into other files. So now I can just go ahead and create my button and screen components. I'll just copy and paste these here. Okay, so now that we have them both exported, we can import them into the app component. Import button. Oh. From button. Okay. Now I can just kind of inject these two into this app component by creating kind of like a custom HTML tag for each of them. And now if I go and take a look here, you can see that even though I'm rendering only the app component, it consists of the screen and button components, which also get rendered onto the page. So now I wanna render as many button components as there is buttons in a calculator. So I have this array prepared already because I didn't want to type it out on the video. It would be just way too long. So now I want to kind of loop over this array and as a result return a button component for each of the items in it. So I want to inject JavaScript directly into JSX. So to do that, I need to use curly braces. Then I just grab this array and I map over it as usual, as you would do it in a normal JavaScript project. So here I just want to return the button component and we can take a look. Yeah, okay, everything seems all right. Now, I don't want it to be just some placeholder text, so I'll go to the button component and create an actual button. Okay. Now, as you can predict, probably every button looks the same. So now the challenge is to take each of those items and give each button component different item as its value. So to do that, we need props. And you can name props pretty much whatever you want, and inside you can enter any value type, including JavaScript. In this case, I just want to give each button a different item from the array. So I'll call my prop name, and I'll give it the item as its value. So now if I go to my React developer tools, and I'm gonna find my button components, as you can see, each button has a name prop, and each prop, it has a different value. So that's brilliant, that's what I want. If you look down here, you can see that there's this props object that has the name property here with a value of plus, for example. So this is exactly how we're gonna kind of dynamically create those buttons. But first, there's an error here. So as you can see, it says something about a key prop. Basically, when you do this, when you create components by mapping over like an array, React isn't sure which component is which, so it needs the key prop to figure out what is what. So you just need to create it here. Now the key prop needs to be a unique value, so the easiest thing to do is to just have it assigned to the index. So yeah, let's see if it disappears now. Yeah, okay, so we don't have the error anymore, and if you look here, every button has a different key value, but the key is not a prop. It's a completely separate entity, and I don't think you'll be able to use it anywhere. It's strictly for React, so it knows what is what. Now, how do I go and inject those names, different names for each button? So I go into the button component, and I need to insert JavaScript here, and we go this.props. So it enters the props object of this component, and it's gonna do the same for each of them. And then we want to grab the name property. And as you can see now, I have all different buttons displayed. The next step is to display the value of each button when it's been clicked. So now I can click the buttons, but it doesn't happen, nothing happens. So I want to kind of display the value of the button on the screen, in the screen component, whenever I click one. This is where state comes in, which as I understand, is the brain of the component. It determines how the component renders and behaves, which allows for creating dynamic components. Just like props, state is an object. I initialize it within the constructor function. So I'll go into my main component, and I create the constructor function. Now here I will do this.state, and I will set it to, I want to create current, and I want to create result. So this is the only time you're gonna use this.state in the constructor when you initializing state. When you wanna mutate it, you need to use this.setState, and you kinda you need to copy state and then mutate it, unless you wanna completely override it. But usually you wanna kind of change it a little bit. So if we had an array of like 1, 2, 3, 4, if we want to add another number here, let's say 5, I would create a variable, and I would spread this dot state dot current in here, so that makes a copy of this array. Now I can push 5 to my array, and then I set state and I set it to current. And in ES6, you don't, if the name of the property is the same name as the variable, you don't need to do it twice. You can just do it like this, and that would override my state here. You cannot do this.state.current equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not gonna work, and I don't think React will let you do that. So anyway, now if I go take a look at this component in the React DevTools, nothing happens. Oh, because I didn't save it. Okay. So now, as you can see, there's this state object. There is no props, but we have a state object, and there's this array. We're gonna actually clear it. We don't need it like this, but it's actually nice that it showed. Great. But now the question is, how do I get the value of the clicked button into this state? This is not the same component. You know, the component I click is the button, and I want the value of it come up to the app. So the better question is, how do I send data from child to parent? Before, we used props to send data from parent to child, but we can't do that this time because, like, you know, you need the component in your render method to pass in a prop, and the button doesn't have the app component anywhere here, so we can't use props to do this. So instead, I will create a function here. I'll call it handle click, and yeah, let's pass in one argument here. And for now, I don't know, we're gonna console log button. Okay, now I wanna pass in this function into every button as a prop, so I'll just use it. I'll give it the same name, and we go this dot handle click. So this is how you share functions between parent and child components. Now if I go in here, we can also look at it in the React DevTools. As you can see, it has the function here. So now I can create an onClick event that is gonna take this dot send to parent, which is gonna be just another function here. And here I just wanna call this handle click. Oh no, wait, I need to do this dot props dot handle click. And here I wanna pass in my this dot props dot name because that's what I'm looking for. So yeah. And if everything works as I think it should, now every time I click a button, it should render it should console log the button I clicked. So that's great. Now all I need to do is update state, because like even though I'm clicking it, the state doesn't change. So let's go to handle click. Now I want to, just as I showed you here, now I want to copy the current property of state. Then I want to push the button, and then I want to set state. Yeah, so let's see how it works now. Yeah, okay, nice. So now I can finally send this information, this data, into my screen component. So again, I'll be using props because we're passing the data from parent to a child, so we can just use props. One is going to be current, and one is going to be result. Okay, we can take a look again. And as you can see, I have an empty array and a result. If I start clicking, the current is gonna change, which is perfect. That's what we wanted. So now I can go to screen and change this markup. I want a screen div and I want 2 spans. Okay. Now one is gonna be for the result and the other is gonna be for the current. So I need this dot props dot current and this dot props dot result. Okay. So now if everything's right, and I think it is because we got a 0 here, when I start clicking the buttons, they're gonna show up above the 0 here. So let's see. Oh, no, that's not what we wanted. Oh, it's because spans are actually inline elements. So if I change it to, let's say, paragraphs, that's what should happen. Yeah, see? So now I get, whenever I click, it displays it on the page, which is great. So the idea behind these two is that whenever a user clicks a button that isn't a number, so like let's say a plus, then this is gonna disappear. The number from this part is gonna disappear, and it's gonna add, in this example, it's gonna add itself to the result, and then the result is gonna change into the new number. This is gonna be empty, and the user can add another number and keep track of the result. So that's the idea behind those two paragraphs here. Now, to sum up this video, today we've built up the components and their basic functionality. We used props to pass data down into child components and a callback function to pass data up into the parent component. I've shown you how to initialize state and how to mutate it. In the next video, I'll show you how to add a CSS preprocessor to your React project, and I'll sprinkle a little bit of CSS so it's nicer to work with. Now all I have to do is to push all my changes to GitHub. So git push, no wait, git add. Now we can see the status. So that's all that's changed, which is correct. Now we can commit it. And the commit message is gonna be building up components. Okay, now I can push it. Okay, great. So that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one.